As I walked into the bathroom, a sparkle on the carpet caught my attention, a sliver of sunlight slipping through the blinds. My curiosity piqued. I cautiously looked down, mindful of my bare feet and the potential for something sharp on the floor. Elaine hadn't mentioned dropping anything, but you never know. A small foil circle, almost blending with the carpet, gleamed in the light. I bent down to pick it up, recognizing it as the backing from a pill strip, the kind left behind when a pill is pushed out. Turning it over, I noticed the markings, which seemed to indicate Tuesday, since today was Wednesday. I don't take any medication. I'm in great health at 35, and so is my wife, Elaine. We both recently aced our annual physicals. So why was there a pill backing in our bathroom? Several types of daily pills came to mind, but birth control was the one that stood out. I had a vasectomy 2 years ago after our second child, so I assumed Elaine wasn't on the pill anymore. She's never had problems with cramps or her periods. Lucky her. So why the pills? My thoughts briefly turned to the possibility of an illness she hadn't told me about, but then I recalled our perfect health reports. If the foil was here, the pills had to be close by. I locked the door and started searching. Eventually, I found them hidden in a box of tampons beneath some aspirin. It was the same type of pill strip she'd used before my surgery, back when we weren't trying for kids. Why had she started taking them again? The only disturbing explanation was that she was sleeping with someone who could get her pregnant. Elaine had cheated on me. Elaine and I had been together for 9 years. I had just graduated and was starting my career as an engineer, while she was working as an assistant. We met in a bar, and though our connection wasn't immediate, she agreed to have dinner with me. Elaine, almost as tall as my 6 feet, was a former athlete with a lean frame and small chest. To me, her most striking feature was her amazing rear. We dated for a year before getting married when I was 26. Our children, now 5 and 2, were the reason I had the surgery to prevent more. From the outside, it looked like we had it all together, a picture-perfect family. Elaine went back to her job after each maternity leave, fully dedicated despite the hefty childcare expenses. I had co-founded an engineering firm with friends. While we weren't rolling in money, I loved what I did. The discovery of the pill backing in the bathroom threw me for a loop. I put it back where I found it, realizing I needed to plan my next steps carefully. Confronting Elaine right away wouldn't help. I needed a strategy and concrete proof. I was filled with questions and doubts. Who was she involved with? How long had this been going on? Was it someone from her work? Maybe even her boss? Was there something in her past that connected to this? And the most gut-wrenching question of all, were our kids really mine? Despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me, feelings of loss, betrayal, pain, and anger, I knew I had to stay focused on gathering facts. I went online and ordered DNA testing kits to check our children's paternity without her knowing. I also bought surveillance gear, tiny voice recorders for her car and bag, and small cameras for the house. I doubted she was meeting someone at home, but I had to be sure. Accessing her phone was crucial. I found a tool that could clone her phone, letting me see her messages, emails, and calls. I needed to buy another phone, which took a few days to arrive. In the meantime, I observed Elaine closely. She seemed normal, and our intimate life was unchanged, happening once or twice a week on weekends. There were no sudden showers when she got home, no suspicious behavior. Either she wasn't cheating, or she was very good at hiding it. The packages arrived on Friday morning at my office, ensuring no questions at home. I got the DNA kits, voice recorders, cameras, a new phone, and the cloning tool. Ready to move forward, I left work early. At home, the nanny was feeding the kids, giving me a chance to set up the cameras discreetly, one in the bathroom, another in the living room, and one in our bedroom for a clear view of the bed. Later, after helping with the kids' bedtime routines, I collected DNA samples from them and myself and mailed them off for testing. Elaine got home right on time, and we slipped into our usual routine, exchanging updates about our days without really listening. After dinner, she took a shower, giving me the opportunity to place voice recorders in her car and bag and clone her phone. I checked the clone for incriminating messages or emails but found nothing. Either she was extremely careful, or maybe she hadn't cheated after all. The weekend went by without a hitch. We had our usual morning closeness before the kids woke up and spent the weekend together, without any interruptions. The missing days on the pill strip suggested she was taking the pills. On Monday, I told her I'd be working from home, which gave me the chance to collect the flash drives from all the cameras and review the footage. The bathroom footage confirmed she was taking the pills, but the bedroom camera revealed something unexpected. On Saturday evening, while I was cooking dinner, she took a shower in our bedroom and texted someone on a second phone that wasn't in her bag. She hid it in the ventilation duct. When I checked later, it wasn't there, which meant she took it with her when she left. I needed to get my hands on that phone. It was the first solid evidence of her suspicious behavior. Reviewing the morning footage, I saw her retrieve the phone from the vent and put it in her bag before leaving for work. That evening, after she returned and showered, her bag was phone-free. Knowing she likely hid it back in the vent, I quietly retrieved it from Mia's room, cloned it, and returned it, almost getting caught when she came out of the shower and found me near Mia's bed, stroking her hair. "Did something happen?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Sometimes I like to sit with one of them," I whispered, "just to remind myself how fortunate I am to have such wonderful children." She smiled. "You're a sentimental old man," she teased. "Let's go before you wake her." The next day, I finally looked at the cloned phone. That's when my world fell apart. Tears streamed down my face as I sat in my office chair, ignoring the intercom buzz. Eventually, my secretary, Nina, knocked lightly and entered. Nina, always professional and conservatively dressed, looked older than her years with her slim frame, red hair, and green eyes. Our interactions had always been strictly professional. I never gave Nina any reason to think otherwise. She once confided in me about another partner who mistreated her, and she considered taking legal action against him. She stayed with the firm because I treated her with respect. That partner, angry and vindictive, demanded her dismissal, giving us an ultimatum. It was either her or him. I chose Nina, which left me with 60% ownership, but cost us a partner. Nina left briefly to handle a task, then returned to my office and locked the door behind her. She handed me some napkins and quietly asked, "What's going on?" I showed her the phone. The text between Elaine and an unnamed person detailed secret meetings and intimate moments, things only a long-term lover would know. It was like I didn't exist in Elaine's private world. "Do you know who it is?" Nina asked, maintaining her composure. I shook my head. "How did you find out?" she pressed. I recounted finding the silver backing on the bathroom floor and discovering the pills. The words came out easily, and she sat silently, holding my hand. A first for us. "You need more information," she advised. "We'll have the DNA results for the kids by Wednesday. Can you wait until then?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. She nodded. "Our team in Portland needs your attention urgently," she said, booking a flight for me. "You'll return Thursday." "I can't focus on work right now." "I'll inform Elaine," she said, taking my phone to send a message. Elaine quickly replied, saying she understood and loved me. After handing back my phone, Nina pulled out her own. "Diana," she said into it. "It's Nina. Yes, thank you. Are you free this afternoon?" "Great. See you then." She took charge, and it was almost a relief to let someone else make decisions. When I came out of the bathroom, she was holding my jacket. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You have an appointment with my friend," she replied. I followed her. Diana, Nina's best friend and a divorce lawyer, had handled Nina's own divorce after she discovered her husband's affair with an employee. Nina explained my situation to Diana while I sat there stunned. This wasn't supposed to be my life. Diana, experienced and efficient, got straight to the point, gathering all the details we had. "Tom," she called out to her assistant, and I knew things were about to get serious. It was clear Elaine wasn't talking to me. She was involved with someone else. A sharp sting on my cheek brought me back to reality. Nina had slapped me. The shock left me momentarily disoriented, but I saw a flicker of surprise and amusement in Diana's eyes before she turned serious. "Tom?" she asked. I nodded. "Do you have a plan?" she asked. My engineer's mind quickly shifted into gear at her question. "Take them both down," I said, expecting a shocked reaction. Instead, Nina grinned. "Okay," Diana said. "I understand where you're coming from, but that's not legally feasible." She laid out our options without pushing any particular one. The first was to do nothing, continue acting ignorant for a more peaceful life. The second option was an amicable divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, which would involve dividing assets and paying child support. The third was the nuclear option, sue for infidelity, contest paternity, and more. My mind raced through the options. The first was out. I couldn't be a passive, betrayed husband. The second didn't fit either. I'd invested too much in our life together. The third option I declared was nuclear. Diana's face lit up with a grin. "All right then," she said. "I'll start preparing the paperwork. I suggest you begin covertly surveilling your wife to gather more evidence. Find out who, when, and where. We definitely need more proof." "Can I keep this phone?" I asked. "It's not doing you any good," she remarked. I nodded and handed it over. Nina and I left Diana's office, and she took me to a small family-run hotel, booking a room for me. "Go shower and order something for the room," she instructed, taking charge. "I'll return later with some items for you." I moved through the motions like a robot. My world was falling apart, and ordering room service felt like the only way to manage the stress. 9 years of my life seemed to evaporate in an instant. What hurt most was realizing how oblivious I had been. How did I miss it all? Was it her boss? The one she always returned to after each child? She said she valued her job and independence, but I couldn't help but wonder if it was just a cover to stay close to her lover. As I eyed the minibar, Nina walked in and said, "Don't even think about it. You need a clear head to come up with a plan. Drinking your sorrows away won't get you anywhere." "Plan?" I retorted, my bitterness evident. I had a plan. A loving wife, 2 beautiful kids, and now look where I am. I'm a betrayed man facing uncertain paternity. My life's in shambles, and you expect me to come up with a plan? Nina glanced at me, then checked her watch. "All right," she said sharply. "Pity party's over. Remember all the hurdles we faced when starting the company? Plans fell apart back then, too." "What does that have to do with numbers?" I asked, struggling to understand. "I don't know," I admitted. "A lot, I guess. There was a time the patent office misplaced our application, but we still outperformed Headingley. Another time the bank tried to foreclose on us under pressure." "Right," she interrupted. "In all those situations, when did you ever just give up?" "It was different then," I said. "Different how?" she asked. "I had something to fight for," I explained. "A family that depended on me. Now you have a family too," she pointed out. "A bigger one, 141 people, and their families are counting on you. No one else can keep the company afloat like you can. If Elaine takes half, she could sell to the highest bidder, and Headingley could swoop in and take everything. Is that what you want?" Her words hit hard. I realized she was right. I couldn't let everything I had built collapse. I had to secure my family's future, despite the uncertainty with Elaine. With newfound resolve, I sat down with Nina and began mapping out a plan. Ensuring the company's future and my family's stability became my foremost goal. The fog of confusion lifted, replaced by clarity. Nina noticed the change in me and gave a nod of approval. "That's the Tom I need," she said. "Someone who plans for the future." We spent the evening devising strategies to safeguard the company's future. At first, I thought about selling my shares to the partners, but Nina nixed that idea. She was concerned they might mismanage or dismantle the company once they were in charge. To keep control, we decided to set up an offshore trust. I would sell the company at market value and stay on as CEO, earning a minimal salary while being shielded from local jurisdiction. This strategy turned me into a paper millionaire once everything was in place. I also planned to liquidate my 401k and tap into my home's equity. Since the house was solely in my name, bought when Elaine wasn't working, it needed reassessment. I made a list of tasks and reached out to my lawyer, Brian Spencer, who managed the company's legal matters, to schedule a meeting for the next day. After Nina left, I fell into a deep sleep, only to wake up to a message from Elaine questioning my sudden departure. I assured her I'd be back by Thursday, but avoided showing too much affection. The next morning, Nina arrived early, and after a quick shower, we had breakfast at a nearby diner. Despite the chaos, I focused on practical steps forward. Nina let me know that Brian had an appointment slot at 10 o'clock, and suggested we stop by the bank first to access my 401k and home equity before seeing him. "I see the benefit of consolidating my finances," I said, "but won't there still be a record of my assets? Can't the court order me to divide them with her?" "Only if you still have them," Nina grinned. "That's where Vegas comes into play. Once you've gathered your capital, spend a week there and blow through it all before filing for divorce. In court, you'll appear broke and deeply in debt. Your house could even face foreclosure, and your income would barely cover your living expenses, unless, of course, the kids aren't yours. If they are, put your entire 401k into a trust for their college fund. Elaine won't be able to touch it, and she might even end up paying you alimony. When will you get the DNA results? Nina asked. I hesitated as I picked up my phone. The company had said the results should be online today. I checked the email with the link but put the phone down. I wasn't sure if I was ready to see the results yet. Can I? Nina asked, and I handed her the phone. Nina scrolled through the screen, her eyes focused as she studied the information. I watched her face intently, hoping for any hint of what she found. Finally, she looked up and said, "The results aren't in yet. They should be here within the next 12 hours, according to the tracking." "Let's go," she said, rising from her seat. We headed to the bank, where releasing equity from the house and cashing out my 401k was done swiftly. I also closed all our savings accounts, including the ones set aside for the children's college funds, and transferred the money into an account solely in my name. The joint account, which held less than $10,000, was left untouched. When we briefed our lawyer on our plan, he raised an important issue. "You forgot one thing," he said. "You have a marriage contract." "I do?" I replied, surprised. I hadn't realized that was part of the partnership agreement. When I started, all partners were required to sign a prenup to protect the company in case of a split. He explained that it covered only company assets, not personal ones. As an employee, it could only claim my salary and 401k, nothing more. "What I suggest," he continued, "is that you invest all the freed-up equity from your house into the company. Buy out one of your partners. Robert seems interested in making money. You might need a loan from the company pension fund to cover the shortfall. Repayments will come from your reduced salary, minimizing your visible assets since everything else will be tied to the company and thus protected. Your credit rating might take a hit from the foreclosure, and you'll lose half of your remaining bank funds, but beyond that, she won't get anything." He paused before adding, "We can adjust your salary to potentially make hers higher, making her liable for child support." "How will I live?" I asked. "If my entire salary goes toward loan payments, I'll still need to cover living expenses, including for my 2 other children, and possibly more." "Let's hold off on discussing the children for now," he advised. "Have you decided on a course of action? If they aren't yours, will you stay involved?" "I'm not sure," I admitted. The enormity of everything was almost too much to bear. I knew I needed to wait until I had all the facts before making any decisions. "Remember your plans with the other lawyers," he reminded me. "I bet the lawsuit against her company will generate enough to cover the loan and restore your full salary. After all this, you can also claim expenses from the children's father if they're proven not to be yours. Post-divorce, separate from the settlement." "Could you reach out to Robert for me about selling?" I asked. "I don't think I can handle that right now." He nodded. "I'll contact him and keep you updated." We shook hands and left his office. For a moment, relief washed over me as the plans started to fall into place. But then reality set back in, reminding me of the reason we were going through all this, leaving an emptiness in my chest. We went to a diner for lunch. Hesitantly, I checked my phone again, clicking on the email link and passing the phone to Nina. I watched her face closely for any reaction. "I'm so sorry, Tom," she said softly, handing the phone back. I took a deep breath and read the results myself. Neither child was biologically mine, though they shared the same father. The shock of discovering this was overshadowed by a searing rage over the betrayal. Not only had she deceived me about their paternity, but she had also convinced me to get a vasectomy. "Tom," Nina said, snapping me back to reality, "now's not the time to lose it. Stay calm, and we'll get through this." Struggling to control my fury, I took deep breaths. My mind raced with thoughts of revenge, even considering hiring someone to deal with the man who fathered the children I thought were mine. Nina remained composed and guided me out of the diner. Diana called. "She wants to see you," Nina said as we headed to Diana's office. Diana looked solemn when we arrived. "I have a preliminary report from a private investigator," Diana began. "Elaine had a visitor last night. A man stayed over at your house." "I have cameras at home," I said. "I'll swap the flash drives, and we can review the footage." "Good," Diana nodded. "Do it now, and then we'll strategize." The footage was critical, but I couldn't risk returning home without arousing suspicion. My cover story was that I was away on business. Diana checked her phone and said, The au pair is occupied with Sophie and Ethan at the play center. I'll keep an eye on things and alert you if she leaves. We drove to my house about a half hour away. Once there, I swiftly swapped out the flash drives, checked the house for anything unusual, and then headed back to Diana's office. As I reviewed the footage, I made a point of skipping over the bedroom scenes. I couldn't bear to see more. My worst fears were confirmed. Bill Wright, Elaine's boss, let himself into the house with his own key. When Ethan called him Papa Bill, I broke down completely. I couldn't watch anymore. Diana saw my despair, and for the first time Nina wrapped her arms around me as I cried. After a while, I managed to pull myself together. Diana asked if I wanted to rest, but I declined. The pain was intense, but now it was mingled with a fierce anger. "What's our next step?" I demanded. "I've got the terms of employment from Elaine's company," Diana said, her tone matter-of-fact. "There's an anti-fraternization clause that could let us sue for breach, especially since the other person is a senior manager." She updated me on what my company lawyer had advised and promptly called him. Moments later, she received the prenuptial agreement via email. "This changes everything," Diana said as she reviewed the documents. "Your partner's plan is solid. If he's willing to sell, we can funnel all available funds into the company to protect it. We can sue her company for non-compliance, Bill for emotional distress, Elaine for falsifying the birth certificate, and both for child-related expenses. It all comes down to whether Robert is ready to sell," I noted. "We'll need to wait for his decision." Nina drove me back to my hotel. As I was about to enter my room, there was a knock on the door. It was Nina. "You shouldn't stay here alone," she said firmly. "Why not?" I asked. "Because you might end up brooding or hitting the minibar," she replied. "I need to keep an eye on you." She gathered my things and led me to her car. "Where are we going?" I asked, feeling numb. "To my place," she said. "I have a spare room you can use." I started to argue, but her determined look stopped me in my tracks. I had never been to Nina's home before, so I was taken aback to find it almost as large as mine, despite being a single-story residence. She led me to a guest room with its own bathroom. "Take a shower and change," she instructed. "Dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. As we sat down for dinner, I was struck by how delicious the food seemed, though I couldn't really taste it. My thoughts were too chaotic, my emotions too raw. I was consumed by a storm of fury and numbness, driven solely by a single-minded focus on executing my plans. My mind felt like it was on autopilot. Just as I was contemplating what to do next, the phone rang. I flinched, hoping it wasn't Elaine. It wasn't. "Hello?" I answered wearily. "It's Robert," came the reply. "Robert," I responded. "Why are you calling?" Robert and I had been friends since our university days, where we first connected over a project that eventually led to our business. I had originally held the majority stake due to my larger initial investment. "I'm calling to confirm," Robert said. "Elaine is cheating on you?" "Flatly stated," I confirmed. "And none of the children are mine." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "So you're planning to tie all your assets to the company and rely on the prenup?" "Yes," I said. "That's the plan." "I'll keep 5% and stay on as a consulting engineer," he offered. "I'll sort things out with HR. The rest is yours." "Okay," I agreed. "I'll have Brian prepare the paperwork." "Tom," Robert said after a pause, "I'm really sorry. It might not feel like it now, but it will get easier. I promise. I've been through this myself." Only then did I recall that Robert had gone through a tough divorce about 4 years ago. Although he had kept the details private, I knew it had been a difficult time for him. He had also utilized his marriage contract. The next morning, Nina woke me with a cup of coffee. "Let's go," she said. "We still have a lot to do." Our first stop was to visit Brian Spencer, the company lawyer, who had already prepared all the necessary documents for buying out Robert. The transaction went through quickly, wrapping up in less than 30 minutes. I liquidated everything: home equity, savings, and 401k. I also took out a loan against the company pension plan to cover the remaining amount. On paper, I now owed nearly $1 million, and my salary was slashed almost in half due to deductions. Next, we headed to Diana's office. She reviewed the buyout documents with a satisfied nod. "This is perfect," she said. "I'll draft the papers today, and we can file them on Monday." "Where do you want her to be served?" "Somewhere that will embarrass her the most," I replied. "If we could do it on a Super Bowl billboard, I'd gladly pay for it." Diana chuckled. "We'll serve her at her office," she decided. Monday morning at 10, provided the papers clear the court by then. If I file today, we should have confirmation by tomorrow afternoon. I nodded in agreement. What's next? Nina asked, taking charge of the situation. We have 2 more stops before you head back to the office and pretend you've just returned from battling a fire in Portland, she said. Can you hold out at home until Monday? I think I'll have to, I replied. No need to guess, Nina said reassuringly. Tell me what you need to get through until then. I'm not sure, I admitted. Any good news? Nina smiled. Let's see. To my surprise, we ended up at the medical center where I'd had all my checkups and the procedure that confirmed I could never father children. Why are we here? I asked. Didn't you want some good news? She teased. Come on inside. Nina had arranged for us to see my doctor promptly. I glanced back at her as we entered the consultation room. She stayed outside, giving me space. I gestured for her to join me, and she nodded. Dr. Harrington, familiar with my situation and Nina's role in it, didn't comment on her presence. Tom, Dr. Harrington began, I understand you're inquiring about a vasectomy reversal. My eyes widened in surprise. Is that really possible? I asked, glancing at Nina, who wore a small, encouraging smile. Yes, it's quite feasible, Dr. Harrington assured me. The success rate for reversals performed after 3 years is around 95%. The procedure does involve a longer surgery under general anesthesia, but it's very likely you could father children again. Tears welled up in my eyes as the hope of potentially becoming a father again washed over me. Dr. Harrington continued, I understand this is a lot to take in. He handed me detailed information about the procedure and its costs, noting that it wasn't covered by insurance. If you decide to proceed, we can schedule the necessary tests. Thank you, doctor, Nina interjected, taking the paperwork from me. We'll be in touch. She stood and I followed her out of the clinic. Is this good news enough for you? She asked softly, a smile on her face. I impulsively hugged her, overwhelmed with gratitude. Thank you, I murmured into her hair, then quickly pulled back. It's okay, she reassured me gently as we got into her car. One more stop, then back to the office. Nina drove us to Bill Wright's house. I had visited Bill's place occasionally over the years while Elaine worked for him. Bill and his wife, Laura, lived in a gated community just outside the city, where they also hosted corporate events. When we arrived, Laura greeted us warmly and invited us inside without hesitation. She led us to a room that seemed to be Bill's office, indicated the seats, and got straight to the point. How can I help you? Laura asked, addressing me directly. I struggled to find my voice before finally asking, Did you know? Laura sighed sadly. No, she admitted. I suspected, but I never had proof. I couldn't find anything concrete to take to a lawyer. If I had, I would have taken him for everything he had. Join the club, Nina muttered under her breath. Laura asked if I had any evidence, and I nodded, showing her the proof that none of my children were biologically mine. My voice faltered, choked by emotion. Laura offered her sympathy, sharing her own long-held suspicions about Bill and Elaine. Despite her efforts, she had never been able to uncover the truth, and she expressed regret for not acting sooner if she had been more certain. What are you going to do now? Laura asked, curiosity evident in her tone. I hesitated, debating whether to reveal my plans to Bill's wife. I wasn't sure if she might inform him upon his return. In the end, I chose not to disclose too much. I wanted Bill to experience the same shock I had. The real question is, I countered, what are you going to do? Laura understood my hesitation and didn't hold it against me. She requested a recommendation for a divorce lawyer, and Nina handed her a business card. Thank you, Laura said, taking the card. Will a week be enough? She asked. That should be fine, I replied. Great, Laura said, standing up. It was clear our meeting was coming to an end. She hugged me briefly and kissed my cheek. I'm so sorry, she repeated, her voice filled with sympathy. Take care. She turned to Nina and added, He deserves better than what that woman did to him. Nina winced slightly at the affectionate gesture, but didn't comment. Back at the office, I spent the rest of the day catching up on tasks from Portland. As the workday ended, I headed home. Nina knocked on my door at her usual time, peered in, and mentioned she was leaving for the day. Her professional demeanor had returned, leaving me feeling adrift. I had felt a growing connection with her, but perhaps it was just my imagination. I bid her good night, grateful for her assistance. Alone in the office, I worked late into the night, catching up on tasks. Around 8, Elaine messaged asking when I'd be home. I estimated another hour or two, explaining that I needed to finalize post-trip matters. She replied with affectionate messages and kisses, anticipating that she would be asleep by then. Once again, I couldn't bring myself to respond to Elaine's message. I pushed through work until nearly 11, hoping she'd be asleep by the time I got home to minimize any interaction. When I finally arrived, the house was dark and seemed normal, but I checked on Mia and Ethan. They were both peacefully asleep, and I was overwhelmed with emotion. I retreated to the bathroom, where I tried to hide my tears over children who weren't biologically mine. Despite having no legal obligation, my love for them was real. How could I walk away from them so soon? They had been my pride and joy, now standing as painful reminders of Elaine's betrayal. I resolved to wait and see how things would unfold, struggling to find rest. When I awoke, Elaine was gone. The housekeeper was looking after the children, and my thoughts darkened. Did she know the children weren't mine? I wondered if she was complicit in Elaine's deceit. By Monday, I promised myself there would be consequences for her actions, ensuring she'd never work as an au pair again. But then, I questioned my own anger. Was I taking out my frustration on someone who might have had little control over the situation? Perhaps she had risked her job or even left if she had known the truth. She genuinely cared for our children, having looked after them even before Mia was born. Maybe my anger was misplaced. At work, Nina was already there, all business as if the past days hadn't happened. She had cleared my schedule for marketing, she said. I settled in as she brought our morning coffees, something new. Marketing? I asked, puzzled. Since when am I involved in that? Nina grinned, which was oddly comforting. We need a strategy, she explained, the final part of Diana's plan. Confused, I asked, what plan? We need to go public, Nina insisted. Tell everyone, her friends, family, church groups, about who she really is and what she's done. I look terrible, I protested. I'll be ridiculed as the betrayed man raising another man's children. You need to tell your side, Nina countered. If you don't, Elaine will, and her version will make you look even worse. Nina explained that going public would undermine any defense Elaine might mount, even if she claimed I was abusive or unfit. To make sure we were prepared, Nina put together a media package with all the evidence of Elaine's infidelity. The package included a private investigator's report, a DNA test confirming I wasn't the biological father of my 2 children, and videos from my home. One video showed Ethan greeting Bill and others in parts of the house I hadn't seen and didn't want to. Later that morning, I received an email from Diana. Laura had provided Bill's DNA, which Diana matched against my test results. It was confirmed. Bill was indeed the father of both children. This revelation hit me hard. I could no longer think of them as my own. We added this new information to our media package, which was to be sent to Elaine's parents, her siblings, and her wider network on Facebook and LinkedIn. The copies were scheduled for delivery by courier on Monday at 10 a.m., timed with a planned event. I just needed to get through the weekend. Drawing on my engineering skills, I quickly designed and built a small device equipped with a motor, timer, and battery. It was set to vibrate after a specific duration. On Friday evening, after the au pair had left, I discreetly placed the device under Sophie's pillow. The plan was to set it off at our usual wake-up time of 6 a.m. the next morning. Everything went as planned. Sophie's entry into our room in the morning preempted any chance of closeness. I smirked to myself, pleased with the success of my little device. I spent all of Saturday catching up on Elaine's long-neglected tasks. When she mentioned it, I casually remarked that they needed to be done. That night, when Elaine tried to get close, I feigned sleep. After she emerged from the bathroom, the device's vibrations woke Sophie, causing her to return to Elaine's room. Sunday was spent with the children at the zoo. Throughout the day, I wrestled with my emotions, trying to reconcile the love I had for Elaine and the children I had come to care for deeply, even though they were not my own. I struggled to keep my emotions in check throughout the weekend, biting my cheek until it bled just to hold myself together. But I made it through, and when Monday arrived, I was resolute. I told Elaine that I'd be working from home, under the pretense of handling matters with the au pair. As she left for work, I barely acknowledged her farewell, my focus on the flood of emails in front of me. Once she was gone, I checked the time, 8:15. The au pair knocked on my office door, suggesting a trip to the play center. I declined, choosing instead to keep the children at home. Ethan was disappointed, but accepted the decision without fuss. Shortly after 9 o'clock, Nina arrived at the house, which was a pleasant surprise. It was the first time I had made coffee for her, a small gesture that felt oddly significant. At 9:30, we joined Diana for a conference call. Diana's voice was serious as she began, "Tom, this is your last chance to reconsider. I'm not saying you should, but if you've had a change of heart over the weekend, now's the time to speak up." "No," I replied firmly, "I'm certain." "Then I'll see you on the other side," Diana said, confirming that everything was set. I watched my email closely for the service confirmation. At exactly 10 a.m., the first email arrived, followed by the second 3 minutes later, and the third 5 minutes after that. Just then, my phone rang. Expecting it to be Elaine, I was surprised to see it was my mother. "Tom, hi Mom," I answered, trying to keep my tone steady. "What's going on?" "Did you read the package I sent?" she asked. "Yes." "Then you know everything I do," I said. "Elaine has been cheating on me, probably throughout our entire marriage, and with her boss. The children aren't mine. I'm divorcing her." "Tom, you can't—" "Yes, Mom, I have to. I've got work and other calls," I said, ending the call abruptly. But it rang immediately again, this time with Elaine's name on the screen. "Tom," she said when I didn't pick up right away. "We need to talk." I stayed silent. "I'm coming home," she said before hanging up. "Elaine's on her way," I told Nina. She offered to stay, but I couldn't find the words to ask her. I simply looked at her, my emotions a tangled mess. "Call me if you need anything," Nina said as she left, clearly understanding the gravity of the situation. About 20 minutes later, I heard Elaine's car pull up outside. She didn't bother using the garage, which only added to the tension. I waited anxiously as she walked into the house and made her way to my office. She entered and took a seat across from me. "Tom, Not interested," I cut her off. "Actually, uninteresting," I corrected. "I don't even want to hear a single word from you. You've lied to me for 9 years. None of the children are mine. You convinced me to get a vasectomy while you were still on birth control, so you could keep seeing Bill." Her eyes widened at my words. "So no, Elaine," I continued. "I don't care what you have to say. My lawyer's card is in the package you received when you were served. If you have something you think I should know, talk to her." "What about the children?" she asked, her voice faltering. "What children?" I retorted. "I don't have children, and if it were up to you, I never would have. I could ask why you did this to me, but I don't want to hear another lie. I'm not interested in your excuses, justifications, or reasons. I want this to end so I can salvage what's left of my life and move on." I called the au pair into the room. "You're fired," I stated flatly. "Leave now." "What? Why?" she exclaimed, confusion evident in her voice. "Because you covered for her," I pointed at Elaine. "You knew she was having an affair with her boss. I don't know if you knew the kids weren't mine, but you definitely knew what was going on. I have video evidence of you discussing the children with Bill. Get out." "Tom, you can't fire her," Elaine interjected, her tone rising. "I pay her salary." The au pair looked at Elaine with a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Fine," I conceded. "I've already contacted the agency and informed them you were complicit in an extramarital affair. If Elaine wants to keep you, she'll have to handle your salary, taxes, vacation, pension, sick leave, and insurance herself." The au pair's face drained of color at my words. Losing her job and being marked by the agency as complicit would make it nearly impossible for her to find new work. Agencies shared information now. "Get out," I told her, and she rushed away, her expression one of shock. "Did you really need to do that?" Elaine asked, her voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. "You started talking again," I snapped. "I don't want to hear anything from you. What I need is for you to gather your things, take the kids, and leave my house." "This is my home too," she countered. "According to the legal documents, no," I said firmly. "The house is registered solely in my name. Until the court says otherwise, you need to go." My tone was sharp and it startled her. Ethan entered the room, looking up at his mother with confusion. "Mommy?" he said softly. Elaine, tears streaming down her face, picked up Mia. I closed my office door, needing a moment of solitude while she packed. When she reappeared with Mia in her arms, I could barely look at her. "Are you going to say goodbye to Mia?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Not like this," I said, my voice cold. "She's not my daughter, and he's not my son. Take them to Papa Bill. Let him care for his children. They have nothing to do with me. Tom, Elaine began, but I cut her off. Just leave, I said. I heard the front door slam shut and the sound of her car starting up. She was gone. I slumped down, feeling like a weight had been lifted, but also like I'd been holding my breath forever. I didn't notice Nina coming in until her arms were around me. I looked up to see her comforting presence, and I buried my face in her shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. It took a long time to regain my composure. I had just dismantled my entire life, 9 years of marriage, the illusion of a family, all shattered. The thought of facing the world seemed unbearable. Nina took charge with a determined look. We need to leave, she said softly. Diana mentioned Elaine could take up to 4 hours to secure an emergency order to reclaim the house. Do you want to let her force you out of your own home? We quickly gathered essential clothes and documents. I was uncertain where to stay, but we loaded my car with my belongings and drove away in Nina's vehicle. Our first stop was the office where I had been served. Later that day, Diana called with an update on the situation. Not only had Elaine obtained a temporary occupancy order for the house, but there was also a restraining order keeping me 100 meters away from it. If I needed to retrieve anything, I would have to arrange it through Elaine's attorney at my own expense. Perplexed by the turn of events, I found myself moving into Nina's spare room. My clothes were now hanging in her closet, and my documents were neatly filed away in her office cabinets. A week had passed since Elaine filed for divorce. During this time, I worked through the day and returned with Nina to her home for meals and sleep. Mornings began with her bringing me coffee and preparing breakfast before we commuted to the office together. Our interactions were strictly professional, though she offered a comforting hug during my first emotional breakdown at home. Smiles were rare given the circumstances. On Monday morning, we met with the lawyers representing Elaine and Bill's employer. The specifics were somewhat unclear to me, but apparently we had filed a claim for an amount beyond what the company's insurance could cover, capped at $1 million. The lawyers were all business. Diana, my attorney, seemed satisfied with the progress. What's the next step? Their lawyer asked. Diana replied, immediate and permanent dismissal of the senior member, with the loss of pension benefits, plus retaining Elaine on staff for 3 years with a payout of $1.5 million. I tuned out during their negotiation. Eventually, they agreed to the terms, though my share was reduced to $750,000. This would help settle some of my debt to the company's pension fund. Diana mentioned that payment would follow the finalization of the divorce. Afterward, we went to the meeting with Bill's lawyers. I left their office with an additional $500,000, which allowed me to fully repay the pension loan and still keep a small reserve for after the divorce. My final meeting of the day was with Elaine's lawyers. Elaine was present but avoided making eye contact when I walked in. Nina and Diana stood by my side as we faced the next chapter of this ordeal. The financial demands in the divorce petition were nothing short of outrageous. Elaine's lawyer started, "Your client is the CEO and majority shareholder of a company worth about $20 million. He has significant assets and savings." "Allow me to interrupt," Diana cut in, sliding a pile of documents across the table. "According to the prenuptial agreement that everyone signed, the company is protected from division in this divorce. My client has recently invested heavily in another company, draining most of his savings, 401k, and home equity. He also took out a loan from the company's pension fund, which has reduced his salary. He now earns less than your client, and I'll be seeking interim support while he regroups." "What about the children?" the lawyer asked, clearly puzzled. Diana responded, "DNA tests confirm these children are not his. Elaine falsified birth records to list my client as their father. We're also pursuing damages for coercing him into sterilization under false pretenses." She added, "Your client can accept the divorce terms as they stand, vacate the marital home and receive half of the joint account, which currently holds $9,443.15. The lawyer reviewed the papers, then glanced at Elaine and finally at me. "Tom, please," Elaine's voice was desperate. 9 years, I said, my voice steady. 9 damn years. You lied to me every single day. There's nothing you can say that I want to hear." Elaine looked at her lawyer and nodded, signing the documents. I wasn't there when she left, but I later received a letter from her lawyer, confirming that the restraining order had been lifted and the house was now officially mine. Despite considering moving back in, I decided to sell the house. While it didn't fully settle my debts, It provided enough to satisfy the bank. 2 months later, I was still living in Nina's spare room. After the divorce, Elaine moved back in with her parents. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, they staunchly supported her and refused to engage with me. In truth, their support wasn't a loss for me. For reasons I didn't understand, Laura had not gone through with her promised divorce from Bill. I chose not to probe further. Their financial situation had deteriorated significantly. They had been forced to sell their house in the gated community and downsize to a small apartment. Bill managed to land a decent job through his market connections and skills, though it came with a significantly lower salary than before. I had no clue if Elaine and Laura had crossed paths. I hadn't seen Laura since that day at her lawyer's office and had no interest in doing so. One day at the office, Nina walked in without waiting for an invitation and announced bluntly, "Jack Reed's dead." "What?" I exclaimed, stunned. "How?" Nina explained. "Apparently Laura caught him with Elaine again. She shot him." I leaned back in my chair, a wide grin spreading across my face despite my attempts to suppress it. "That couldn't have happened to a nicer guy," I finally said. Nina chuckled. "Are you mad at me for being glad about this?" she asked. "Not at all," I replied, still grinning. "That idiot got exactly what he deserved." Nina then placed an official-looking envelope on my desk. We both knew its contents. I opened it and read the final decree. "That's it," I said quietly. "I'm finally a free man." "Finally," Nina echoed. Then unexpectedly, she leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't just a quick peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss that left me breathless. When she pulled back, I sat there, stunned and tense. "For 9 years," Nina began softly, "I've been by your side. You're the most honorable man I've ever known. Not once did you make any advances or look at me inappropriately, and I admired you for that. I've been waiting for this moment for 9 years. Now that you're free, I want to show you that not all women are deceitful. We make a great team. I know you inside out, just like any wife knows her husband, and you know me too. Please, give me a chance to prove it." I was speechless. Memories of our time together, especially after Elaine's betrayal came to light, flooded my mind. I realized I had genuine feelings for Nina. It was impossible not to develop them after working so closely together for so long, particularly during my troubled marriage to Elaine. My feelings were clear and undeniable. "Do you have anything to say?" Nina asked, her concern evident, a rare and heartfelt sight. "How many?" I asked. "Confusion?" she asked, brows furrowing. "How many children should we have?" I clarified, looking at her with hope in my eyes.